Let's unbox the Black Series 6-inch figure of Zaalbar from Knights of the Old Republic. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. I'm a really big fan of the Knights of the Old Republic series of video games, KOTOR 1 and 2, and SWTOR, the MMORPG. So recently I opened up the Darth Revan 3.75-inch action figure from the Vintage Collection line, absolutely fantastic. And I also opened up a fantastic Master Edition collector's box full of goodies and collectibles from the second Knights of the Old Republic game with the Darth Nihilus on the cover. So continue the KOTOR fun, I'm opening up a Black Series 6-inch figure of a character from the first game, Zaalbar, the Wookiee companion that you meet early on in the game, and he can join your party. I'm really hoping that Hasbro will continue the line of characters from the KOTOR series of video games. There's still a lot from the first game and plenty from the second game that I'm really still hoping that they add to their Gaming Greats line in both 3.75-inch and a Black Series 6-inch figures, but today I'm really happy to have this one from the first game to open up. I'm really excited. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll get this really large Wookiee character and accessories out of the packaging so we can go over all of the cool details. But first, let's take one last look at the packaging. This Black Series figure of Zaalbar from Knights of the Old Republic is part of the Gaming Greats line. You can see the silver foil sticker here on the front, which is actually in a bit of a recessed shape here on the front window. Now, I kind of wish that Hasbro would make a full line of figures from Knights of the Old Republic, but I understand that the video games aren't quite as well known as characters from the movies and Disney Plus TV shows, so they lump them all together in this Gaming Greats line. Though I still hope they continue to make more from some of my favorite video games. We have here the older style of Black Series packaging now. Hasbro has changed away from this to a more squared off box shape, but I do still like this classic side angle shape here. We've got the Black Series logo across the top, a nice big rectangular window here showing the figure inside and the accessories. And we've got a really fun sort of teal bluish color here for the Gaming Greats line. And the title just fits here, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and we also have that color used for the character name here, Zaalbar. On the side, we've got some really fun artwork of Zaalbar looking a little bit grumpy here. Side on, we can see him holding a very large vibro sword here, and of course that same accent color coming down to the character name there in black. A little bit harder to read against this darker color, but it is there. Moving on to the back here, we have that same side art here again on the back, a little bit more zoomed in and cropped there, so we can really see the texture of that Wookiee fur in the art. And we also have the full original Knights of the Old Republic logo there. I really like having the video game logo here because we only just have the text on the rest of the packaging there. We can see Zaalbar is number 04 from the Gaming Greats line, and we see the game title there, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. We do have a bit of a blurb for Zaalbar as well. Up here it reads, "You alone determine the destiny of the entire galaxy in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic," featuring iconic Star Wars locations and original characters like Zaalbar, a Wookiee who aids Revan in their quest. And that blurb is repeated there in a few different languages. And of course, the bottom half of this is just sort of warning, copyright, all of that kind of stuff there with the barcode on the underside there. That large front window does wrap around here on the left, and we also have the Gaming Greats logo printed here in a bit of a gloss finish. This one isn't a sticker like on the front here. I'm really curious to see what the Gaming Greats line will look like in the new packaging. This one here is a little bit shop worn. There is a little bit of damage and wear and tear to this one because here in New Zealand, the Gaming Greats line is generally sold by an exclusive retailer, which do unfortunately price them higher because they don't have any competition. They price them higher than standard Black Series figures, so I do try and wait to see if I can pick these ones up on sale, which I was able to do so for Zaalbar. So I'll trade off a discount in price for just a little bit of wear and tear on the boxes because I do open my Black Series figures up. So without further ado, let's get stuck in and get this figure figure out. So now I have Zaalbar and the accessories out of the packaging so we can go over all of the details. And first things first, this is a big toy. So of course the Black series is regarded as a 6-inch line, but Wookiees are generally taller than standard characters. So I can already feel that this one is taller than most of my other Black series figures. I've got one from Knights of the Old Republic for a little bit of a comparison later on, but first let's check out all of the details. So this is kind of an unusual unboxing for me. Most of the figures that I unbox are sort of humans or maybe troopers with armor, so they have very sort of standardized sculpting and articulation. Wookiees are just something completely different. I know they were performed on set. They've got generally sort of human proportions, but they are very large, and then of course we've got this all over fur, so rendering that as a plastic toy does change it a lot from just clothes and a standard sort of people dimension. So there's a lot to go over. I'm going to start off with the face here. So this is a pretty good Wookiee sculpt. I really like this one here. We've got those little eyes sculpted in there, a little bit of paint for the nose, a little bit of accenting here in the mouth, which is slightly open. We can see some of those Wookiee teeth there. And overall, we've kind of got that nice swept back hair sculpting. Sometimes long Wookiee fur looks really good in sort of solid plastic. Sometimes it doesn't. I actually really like the way it's been rendered here in this Black series line. He's not as bulky in the game like the ones that we see in episode 3. They're a lot more sort of built Wookiees. He's a little bit more of a Chewbacca build, so I think that this is a pretty good rendition here. Overall, he doesn't actually come with any clothes or anything, but we can see that we have this red plastic harness that comes up over his shoulders, attached to a bit of a belt here around the waist, and we have a little bit of an attachment point here. I'm really hoping it's going to be fun to attach that big vibro sword across his back there. I do really like the painted effects here. In the box, sometimes you can't see all of the paint details through the plastic, but I can really see they've done a pretty good job adding some texture here. There is actually a bit of shading going on under the chin to really sort of define the chin there, so we can really see a bit of shading and darker hair around here, and then we get to some much more paler hair color here around the edges, especially when we compare it to, say, the arms. This section of the arms doesn't appear to be accented with paint or anything like that, except for the hands, which are painted lighter. But down the front, this looks like a much paler plastic. And then we've got some painted elements here. And you can just sort of see it more trailing off down here. We get that sort of chest fur, just a little bit lighter than the fur at the sides and the arms. I really like that. Just gives it a little bit more of a depth there. And we can also see this perhaps a little bit more clearer in the back. So we've got some of that lighter here, and then we can see that the back has been painted. And you can kind of really see that there compared to the fur here. It's really sort of highlighting the deep crevices in the sort of hair sculpting, and then it sort of fades out. Down here we can just see that sort of lighter patch here just below the belt, and then it fades down, and then for the legs we just have that plain plastic there. I do like the way they've kind of feathered the edges over the articulation points. The one point where you can sort of really see it here is at the top of the thighs. We can kind of see, it kind of looks like we can see little shorts underneath, because that is just a solid flat plastic just underneath that sort of torso fur coming down here. Of course, it's going to be pretty hard to put some sculpting on under there, so I can see that sort of smoother plastic there, but it doesn't really draw the eye. I can just make out that articulation line, but I'm hoping that because the fur doesn't overhang the hip joints too much, we'll still be able to get some really cool poses. Of course, for me, I generally stand my figure straight up, and because he is so tall and a little bit top heavy, he's got a bigger torso, I'm probably going to make sure that he's standing very steadily on his legs. And straight out of the box, he is really steady. Of course, he has big Wookiee feet. That's going to make him a lot more steady than a lot of other characters. And we can see that he's even got ankle articulation, but it is predominantly hidden underneath all of this fur. It doesn't actually cut in. That articulation's hidden underneath, kind of like the cascading effect of the fur. each bit sort of overlaps the part underneath, so we get this lovely sort of hanging effect of all of the fur. It just makes me think of the way that sort of fursuit moves when, say, Peter Mayhew performing as Chewbacca would walk on set. It kind of gave it a really neat movement on screen. Of course, Zaalbar is a video game character. He doesn't have quite the same sort of movement, but I like that they sort of follow on from the on-screen Wookiees that we see. So we can see that the fur coming down here is all part of the head, which means that we're probably not really going to be able to tip this head very much. So yeah, that feels like a completely solid head. I would even be surprised at this possibly a tiny bit of movement there, but yeah, because we've got it coming down here in the back and at the front and over the shoulders, we're not turning that head in any sort of direction. He's pretty much fixed there, but we can get some pretty good movement from the arms because that shoulder piece and harness is nice and clear from the top of the shoulders there. And something about, you know, thick joints and stuff like that, they feel very sturdy. So I can actually get his arms all the way up as far as I'd want them to go, and of course we can swivel those around so I can get them fully up there as well. That's about as tight in as I can get there. He's very tall. There we go. Now let's check out that elbow articulation because it's a little bit more hidden. Yeah, so we are going to get a little bit of that plastic sculpting impacting how tight we can move the elbows. I'm getting it hitting on that ledge there with that fur sculpting on the inside of the elbow. So I'm not really going to get much of a tighter one than that. I can rotate the hands here, but I'm probably, oh yeah, we can get a little bit of an inward movement there as well as that rotation. And then of course we're probably going to get the same thing on the other side. We're going to get that plastic. I can just make out I'm bending that little piece of plastic, bending the elbow in. Of course that's just a tiny little bit there of sculpting, but yeah, that is definitely sort of going to restrict our ability to keep his arms up high. But you can kind of do like the sort of, you know, Wookiees kind of putting their arms up in the air, but he's got some cool accessory weapons. So I'm going to probably have his arms down here. And I know it's always a trade-off between articulation and accuracy, but I think if we shaved down these sort of hair tendrils so that we don't have quite as much of a sort of a feathered look with the hair, so that we had more articulation, it would start looking a little less like a Wookiee, I think, if we had sort of these harder joins that we sometimes see on the more human characters. I really like the way that the fur comes down so completely over the back of the hands. You can see the hand here on the inside and how much further that hair actually comes. A lot longer than I think on Chewbacca. It's really quite interesting. And you can see the painting of the hands there is a lighter color than the fur. We've got a pretty good grip there, pretty big hands. We can see that extended trigger finger. On this side, we don't have that extended trigger finger. It's kind of sculpted. It's a little bit extended, but it is kind of more joined to the fingers underneath, a much more tighter grip. So that's going to be interesting. So we do have, I can move those out of the way. We do have that middle of the torso articulation point, but we do get a little bit more restrictive with the sort of front and back because of the way that we have the hair sculpted down, but I can get a little bit of a turn there. Though of course we do have this harness, which is a little bit restrictive. The harness is a separate piece, but it isn't designed to come off. So if you want to customize this figure, you're probably going to have to take scissors or an X-Acto knife to cut this piece in some points, and it will probably come off. I'm keeping mine as Zaalbar, so I will not be removing it, and it doesn't look like it's really designed to be removed because there are no seams on this waist part there. And so let's check out the leg articulation. So I can get him to about there. So he can lean forward a little bit, but then you can really start to see that smooth plastic there at the hips. It's interesting that we do actually have a little bit of a sculpting split here at the sides, like we often see on some characters with longer tunics, like some Jedi characters. We have a little bit of a split up the side to allow us to get a little bit more freedom of movement there at the hips. It's not doing a lot for us on this particular one, even though this front edge is kind of short. It does still impact there. If I push it just just a little bit. I can get to about there, but like I said before, I'm probably going to have mine standing straight up. I can still see that split when he is standing in a more neutral position. I kind of wish it was maybe just a little bit more sculpted tight, because we can see there is just that plain plastic through there, but it's on the side, and I understand having a little bit of an allowance for flexibility for people that want to get a little bit more adventurous than I do with their poses. So let's check out the knees. I'm hoping we've got some good posability here. So the fur is sculpted hanging down in the front. Fantastic job of hiding that there, but in the back we can see those exposed joins. So let's see how far I can actually get back. Okay, so I'm hitting plastic there. So that is actually kind of a cool pose if you like to get, you know, sort of action poses like running down a hallway or attacking a foe posed in front. That's kind of fun there. I'll check the other leg as well. I could probably push that a little bit further, but you can kind of see just how close that sculpting is getting to that back knee. I can get it to about there. So that's a pretty good leg lift there. That's probably a little bit more than I thought I would be able to get. And if I tilt this one towards the back, I can actually get quite a high running pose there, probably higher than I would actually want to pose realistically for this specific character anyway. I think some more acrobatic characters, like certainly Jedi, I always think about them sort of, you know, doing acrobatic flips with their lightsabers. Let's check out the feet. So of course we're not going to be able to tip the feet towards the back because this is just fully solid here, but we've got just a little bit there, you can see, because we've kind of got a little bit of a cutout here in the front. So we can click the ankles just a little bit just to help us get a little bit of a sturdy pose, because of course he's got that very sort of top heavy center of gravity, but he is very sturdy to pose, which I'm always glad to see. I was really hoping so with these sort of heavy wide feet, because he does have a lot of plastic mass here up the top. I was hoping he wouldn't become a bit of a topple hazard. He's just fantastic. I really like the sculpting. I know Wookiees can be a hard one subjectively. Sometimes they can be hit and miss, you know. Sometimes other toys, you know, we see them done in faux fur and they can look a little bit more like a cuddly toy. Things like Lego, it can be somewhat odd, you know, seeing the fur in the plastic bricks like that, but I think this is a pretty good version of a Wookiee in the Black Series line. It feels like a Zaalbar figure to me, so that's pretty cool. I'm going to go on to the accessories now. So we've got a Wookiee bowcaster, which came in 2 parts. I'm just going to show this one here. It's a plain gray. We have a painted element here for the grip. We have a small enclosed trigger guard here. You can just see that there. And we've got an attachment point here. And then it is the same on the other side. So these are quite sort of complicated weapons. I always struggle a little bit with bowcasters for posing because they're just big and a little bit of a different kind of grip. So this one is made from the same standard gray plastic as the most of this part, but then we've got the end little balls painted in a gold color there, and we can see the attachment peg hole on this side. So let's go ahead and attach them. So you can see we've got an asymmetrical shape there. I'm going to try and pop this on the right way, and hopefully this is going to click in securely. That can probably go on. I'll see if I can press that on just a little bit tighter. That's a pretty good join there. That went on fairly snugly. You can see I've just got a little bit of a gap. I'll probably have to just give that a little bit of a tighter push. Very tight, but yes, I think I've got that on about as good as that one's going to go. So that is a pretty big accessory. That looks pretty cool. Appropriately sized for a Wookiee. I'm looking forward to getting him to hold that one. And this one to me is the accessory that I'm the most excited about. So early on in the game, especially when you have Zaalbar, he has this really cool vibro sword. And if you play the app game Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, you know that Zaalbar has this iconic vibro sword in the game. So this is what I was really excited about. It is really long and it feels really fun to hold. So it is a little bit flexible, but not bendy. It's not a rubbery plastic. We can see that it isn't particularly sharp. We do have a little bit of a sort of a body to the edge here. It's soft along the edge. It's not going to cut or anything like that. But we do have this fantastic metallic silver paint along this edge. We've got this really fun, vibrant red here with sculpted details. And then we have a gold sort of woven, like gold leather or something over the handle here. And we have a silver end to it. This is just so cool. It wouldn't be Zaalbar without a vibro sword. This is a really long accessory. It's not quite as tall as Zaalbar himself, but it is pretty tall. So this is the thing that I really want to pose. But first, I just want to see how well it can be attached to that back of that harness there, because we've got this little sort of clip here that I think we're just going to sort of wiggle the sword into in terms of stashing it on the back. So I'm just going to sort of press it into this and see if I can kind of get the edge there. Just kind of wiggled it in and pressed it in, and it just kind of holds by tension just by sort of opening up that little bit of a grip. And then we get the sword sort of mounted across. That looks really cool. That's neat. I love this accessory. That looks really cool. I like that I can stow that on the back, though to be honest I'm probably going to have Zaalbar posed with it for my display, but I like that we've got the option to put it there as well. So removing that just comes out nice and easily. So let's see how well this is going to go in the hand. So the hands on this particular figure do look tight, and they're not too sort of movable, I guess is the word that I can best think to describe. So the end of this one's kind of big, and that's a bit of a push to get that through the fingers, but there we go. I can get that into his Wookiee hands, and now we have Zaalbar with a very big vibro sword. That is just fantastic. That is huge. Really cool. Such an iconic weapon from the video game. I really like that this figure included one, and I like that red and gold. Just works so well with Zaalbar's harness. That's so cool. It's so big. I really want more figures from this game so I can have him attacking a villain. I loved those Sith troopers in the game. Oh, just fantastic. So okay, let's tackle the complicated one. These ones are always tricky because I'd never know whether to sort of put their hands through this part, sort of how to have it posed in there, because you kind of have to sort of get it in like this. It's always a bit of a tricky one. And then we've got that Wookiee finger, which to be honest, looks bigger than this tiny little trigger guard. You see the size of the finger and that trigger guard? I'm not sure how well this is going to go in here. So I'm going to give it an attempt or two, and then I'm probably going to have to spend a bit of time later trying to figure out the best way to get this in this Wookiee's hands. I'm going to try and get this part through the finger and then see if I can get, so you can try and see what I'm doing here, because this is tricky. I don't know if I can get this through under the fingers. That's quite stiff. We're kind of getting it there. Okay, so I can get it there, and then I think it's going to take a little bit of pulling to get that finger into the trigger guard, because it kind of just wants to sit beneath it, because that's just in a neutral pose. I think I would have to pull the finger to fit it into that trigger guard. So I'm probably just going to leave it like that for now, because I just want to see how well I can kind of, because this hand is also very tight. I'm not sure. You can see there's quite an overlap with the thumb and fingers, because usually I like to get that kind of two-handed pose. So I think I'll have to spend a bit of time trying to get this particular Wookiee figure to hold the bowcaster in two hands. But you can kind of pose it like that in just kind of a general style there. But I do like that he can hold it. I was a little bit worried looking at that trigger guard and wondering how I was going to get the accessory into his hands. His hands on my figure, those fingers are quite tight. That was quite a bit of an effort to kind of pull that through. But I like that he can hold it. So yeah, I'll spend a bit of time trying to see if I can get his hands to hold on to that bowcaster a little bit better. And yes, if you don't use it for this particular figure, it does come out of the hand fairly easily. But personally, I like this vibro sword. I think this is cool. It really makes him feel very different to the Wookiees that we see on screen like Chewbacca that come with bowcasters. So I like him being a little bit different, really makes him stand him apart. So I mentioned earlier that I had another KOTOR figure just for a little bit of a quick comparison. So I've got Zaalbar standing there, and then I have Bastila Shan. So these are two characters that you as the player encounter early on in the video game, and they join you as companions. And because this is a 6-inch figure line, we have them at appropriately scaled heights. Wookiees should be taller than people, and so we can see just the incredible height difference. Bastila does have some heels on her boots, but she is a pretty standard figure height there, and we can see her not even coming up to the shoulder of Zaalbar there as a Wookiee. So I think that is a fantastic sense of scale there. I really hope Hasbro gives us more characters from Knights of the Old Republic, especially Mission, who goes alongside Zaalbar. They are friends, you meet them together in the game. It almost feels a little bit unfinished to just have Zaalbar by himself. And of course, there are plenty of other iconic characters that you meet along the way. Jolie Bindo, Candaris Ordo, Carthon Nassi, of course, HK-47, T3 and 4. There are just plenty of characters that I think would be really fun. And of course, past me that just spent untold hours and days playing this video game never dreamed that we would actually have figures and collectibles from one of my favorite video games. So I'm just overjoyed to see characters like this in the Black Series line. I just really want Hasbro to continue on and create some of the other characters. We do get a lot of battle droid repaints, different variations of stormtroopers and biker scouts and things like that. I want some of the unique characters from this video game. KOTOR still holds up as one of the best Star Wars video games ever made. I really want more action figures in both scales, the 3.75-inch and this larger 6-inch scale, because it is a fantastic game, and I just absolutely love seeing characters like this in actual physical plastic collectible form. Really fantastic. This was a really great figure. Of course, I feel a little bit bad that I waited to buy him on a clearance, but you know, I wasn't too fussed about the box, and he did cost a lot more than a standard figure. So super excited to finally have him in my collection. I just need to fill out the rest of them. They're just so fun to seeing some of my favorite video game characters in my Black Series collection. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Black Series Gaming Greats figure and had a lot of fun at checking out all of the details. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Black Series fan, I've also unboxed the Darth Malak 6-inch figure. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Black Series unboxing playlist. This is the way.